Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Mark is here.
Yes, no problem.
Wesley, I have a question for you. Okay. So last week we talked about Lucine. I had the guy on mail, and apparently this class is there. He just told me where to find it, or he also told me he might have migrated it from the Java source code and on his laptop, so he will share it. So still going on. 1.n AAD. I saw the Microsoft dev who made the required changes to the module, and he had never created a pull request on GitHub, so that's why it didn't work when he tried that, and he will try again. But an issue and a question to Wesley is that he says that with the module since November 1st, the new organizations, the new applications which are created since November 1st don't work with the library. Oh, just for Graph API calls apparently, which you didn't implement but he did implement. So maybe that's why he's looking into the code. So you can't answer my question, I assume, because it's in the Graph API call.
What Graph API call?
Because the Microsoft dev improved your module with
so he added in Graph API. Okay.
Yeah, that's why. Okay, so you can't answer that. You will try to fix it then. Okay.
So has he submitted a pull request, you said?
Well, apparently he tried. He thought it went through, but when I showed him the repository, there was nothing. So he said, okay, maybe I made a mistake, and he's using the GitHub client, which is weird.
Okay, yeah.
And so I showed him how to do that from the GitHub website, and so he should try again now.
Okay.
If I've seen anything, I will contact him if it's not done in the next few days. Okay, cool. Gallery no news. I still need to publish it live. Wait, let me create a new page. Demos. So we'll do status. Demos. I know Sipke has one, as you asked me.
Sébastien, your voice is very low again.
That's not me, that's you.
No, now it's good.
You see? That's you.
So you lean back or something?
No, I have a headset, so the microphone is always close to my mouth. Let me bend the microphone. 1 second. Now it will be closer. See. So widgets / elements. If we have time, I think we'll have. I'll show portrait 2, how it works right now, just for Nick because he wants to see. What else do we have? Elections. So I don't know about the elections because Brett is not here because he got a new job. He's working now at SpaceX. He's building softwares to ship rockets on Mars or something like that, and he started yesterday, so he's quite busy, but he took the votes in. George, did you hear from him, or did you follow the process?
Yeah, I'm getting all the votes, so everyone can just keep voting, and I'll work with Brett to make sure that we can certify the election. So
well, you can keep voting until 10 minutes ago, so.
Well, there you go. Then if you didn't vote by now, then it's not going to happen. But yeah, I have all of the votes. He set up an alias and I'm on it. So if for some reason he can't do it, I can. I'll work with him to make sure that we'll get everything counted and figure out who the next year's victims are.
Okay, so we'll announce the results next week, and Bertrand also will be there. He's not here today because I assume he's been elected. He's always elected. Okay, so votes are closed. I will update the complex discussion. What else? Elections are closed, and either Brett or George to announce the results. We'll do the dictator elections on November.
Sebastian, your audio does drop out from time to time. It goes very, very low for a few seconds, and then it sort of comes back.
That's just you?
Yeah, it's just all of us.
Is it for everyone?
Yes.
Yeah.
Me
Okay.
too.
Okay, let me
Your wire is shorting out somewhere or something.
let me reconnect the microphone just to see.
Yeah, you need a new microphone.
2, 1, 2. I can hear you well, so can you hear me? No?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Thank you. Just tell me if it's okay. Interrupt me. Elections, dictator elections on November 24th. I'd like Bertrand to be here if he's elected. Good. Status. To have it open, yes. So last week was here. We merged some pull requests. This one from Jean-Thierry about fixing, I think you saw that, Daniel, fixing database locks which were not released automatically. And to repro that, you just enable the jobs queue and it will be blocked. So he fixed it. This one from Katsuyuki, who is Harmony on GitHub. This one is fixed behavior of element controller and around letting and updating, and Sipke saw that and we pulled that, or he did, I can't remember.
He had a question. He suggested that we should push this to 1.9x instead of dev. Question to you, do you agree with that? On the one hand, it can have, potential problems because it was written in a certain way to solve certain issues, and some other user already experienced some issues with his changes that he provided another fix for that. But the question is, should we take this into 1.9x because he regards this as a bug fix, or should we leave it on dev?
So what is the bug? What is the impact of the bug? And is it a
So,
regression?
no, it's not a regression. It's his change, Harmony's changes introduces a problem. It does improve the code, but it introduced another issue in a certain scenario that another user discovered, for which he provided another fix. But it's hard to know if that doesn't introduce any other issues.
Okay, so
the code is.
This commit introduces an issue?
Yes.
Okay, so why would you want it on 1.9x if it's introducing?
Because in his view, it fixes the original issue. So he explained that he ran into another issue that exists on 1.9.2, which he fixes. But with his fix, he introduced another issue. For which he provided another, which he did fix, but and it's probably good, but we can't know for sure until we test, of course.
So dev.
That's what I'm thinking. I think it's safest if we put it in dev. Then I'll update the discussion and ask him to create a pull request for and target the dev branch for his second fix on his original fix.
Yep.
Cool.
So that must be it. Implementing import export support for harvesters. And when you mean harvesters, you mean element harvesters. Okay. Not.
Yeah, exactly. It's these element providers. And basically enables you to, because you can implement custom elements by inheriting from the element base class, but you don't have to go that way.
Good. Good, and it's on dev branch. No, it's on its custom branch, widget elements.
Oh yeah. Because I ran into a shortcoming while working on that thing, and
Okay.
I figured I'd just fix it up because I assume we're gonna pull this in at some point.
19x update cache item record. Yes, for the database cache module.
Yeah, this was a pull request. This guy discovered an issue with in Hibernate complaining.
Mm-hmm.
The output was
Makes
longer
sense.
than a certain number of bytes, I think. So it seemed benign, so I just merged it in.
Good. How? No, it's a string. Okay. And this one is the merge. Then updated client validation registration coordinator with updated interfaces. Client validation registration coordinator. That's some class. Validation registration coordinator. Okay.
Yeah, it's
Event
basically
handler.
an element event handler. Yeah.
Okay. Proving layouts. And this is the pool from Harmony. Merging. Fix an issue with copy paste on layouts still.
Yeah, this is another issue that I ran into while implementing widgets as elements.
Okay.
And the element they point to a content item, but if you to manage the lifetime of those content items, you also want to be able to delete those content items as you delete elements. And the issue was that if you cut an element, then it would actually delete that element and store that in some sort of recycle bin collection, and that would then be persisted on the server, which would effectively delete the content item. So
when you work on your widgets element branch and you fix some bugs, feel free to also cherry pick in 19x if you think it's a safe fix.
Okay. Yes, but I'm assuming that we will merge in widget elements into the dev branch.
Yeah, but if it's a bug fix, 19x.
Yeah, you mean it?
Just cherry pick.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, I see what you're saying.
This one, merge, menu events. This is the event handler. Audit trail diff. Interesting. There was a stack.pop and now there is no more stack.pop.
Yeah, this is an issue that it works still, but it didn't work before this change. If there was a certain chain of events where the XML diff document would have a certain element as the final element or something like that, and that would expose this bug. But the push and pop calls are balanced now. They weren't before.
Fix potential widget or fonts when deleting layout content. This is on your branch that you will show. Added tabbed editor UI support to menu item types. Menu item types. Okay, when you edit a new menu item. Okay.
Yeah, because of the different stereotype. It uses its own controller. Actually, that's the issue.
Okay.
It's not using the contents item controller.
Good.
Or the contents admin controller.
Okay, great. Questions and changes? Sipke, do you want to show what you did then?
Yes, sir.
1 sec.
Second.
I know what to do. I need to do it. Sipke, where are you? Sipke here. Stop copying the presentation. Okay, good.
Present desktop. Currently presenting. Is someone recording?
It's,
Benedict?
Yeah, I'm recording.
Okay. Let me know when you can see my screen.
Yeah, it's okay. I see it, thanks.
Okay, cool. So I've been working on support for widgets that are placeable on the canvas, which is a popular request, which works. In order to enable that, what I had to do is implement a new ElementHarvester, but also add support for managing the dynamically created content items as part of those elements. Because if you delete an element, you don't want to have those orphanal widget content items in the database, of course. And that now works. So what you can do now is create new pages with widgets. So you can say, for example, I'll add a grid and a row with 2 columns. And then you can start adding widgets that appear here as, in the form of elements. But what they are, in fact, are elements pointing to an actual widget content item. So you can say, for example, drag and drop an HTML widget here. And what I included a piece of JavaScript that would hide the widget part UI, so you don't see the zone and you don't see the layer dropdowns, but they are here under the covers. Then you can hit save, and there it is, a widget. Also works on the front end, of course. Widget elements, and this is the so what the elements do, they just delegate their rendering to the driver of the widget itself using the Content Manager API, and it also works for even layout widgets. So you can now have nested layouts using a layout widget, which itself uses the layout editor.
Wait, I'm lost. What is a layout widget?
Oh, so a layout widget that was introduced as part of the layouts module, and basically it's just a widget with the layouts part.
Oh crap! Fuck. Oh man.
Yeah, you probably don't want to use this.
Do you have a stack.pop also here?
Probably missing a few pops here and there. I think I did include code that prevented, for example, yeah, there is code actually that prevents stack overflows. So if you would add a content item that rendered a layout that would in turn reference that same content item, it is actually pushing something to some stack collection, preventing that issue. But I haven't tested it in this scenario, which I will. But this is a layout widget, and to that you can add additional widgets or elements, whatever you like. For example, the menu widget, that's interesting. Yeah, and that works.
It works. Doesn't mean you should do that, right?
Absolutely. No, I don't recommend doing this. But the bigger picture here.
Sorry, would it be possible to have these widgets also render something for the canvas in editor mode, so that you could see their output already here in more of a WYSIWYG kind of way, if you will?
Yeah, technically that's possible. But one potential issue with that is, for example, if the widget renders, for example, a form element, an HTML element, then that will break the layout editor. So we would have to implement some sort of a set of filters that filters out certain, breaking HTML elements. Other than that, it's easy.
Yeah, we already backed off from some of them rendering in the admin because it was breaking the admin.
Correct. Yes. So originally we had.
And when you do that, if it's breaking the admin, you can't revert because the only way to remove the widget is to go in this edit page.
Yeah, you would have to delete the content item and start from scratch, which is sad. Yeah, so that's the reason we're rendering some sort of abstract representation of the widgets.
Could look nicer if it was taking more space and with a nice glyph showing it's a widget, and
For sure, yeah.
But isn't this going the wrong direction as far as developing for the layout? Because shouldn't things start as an element and then you can possibly wrap them as a widget?
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And that brings me to, that's a nice segue into the bigger picture that I'm alluding to. This is a temporary bridge where you can use layouts, and if you have an existing set of widgets, you can now use them on your layouts. But the bigger picture is that instead of using widgets, it should all be elements.
Is it a feature? Is it an optional feature?
Currently it's not, but we can easily turn it into an optional feature if you think that makes sense.
I think because if we say you should not put your widgets inside layouts because they're not supposed to do work this way. It's just
exactly.
Way...
I think we should recommend starting, if you write something custom, write it as an element, which you can turn into a widget easily without developing anything, writing code. Because ultimately what I would like to see is, if you go to this screen here, this would be like a layout editor where each column or cell would just represent a zone, which you can't edit here. It would just be a representation similar to this little thumbnail here. And then you can drag and drop elements into those zones bound to layers. And if you wanted to point an element to a content item, that's what you would do. That would be what we currently call widgets. That would be a widget, an element pointing to a content item. Because you may want to place content in certain zones, because that's why we have widgets in the first place.
Another reason to make this an optional feature might be that we don't want this to have a dependency on the widgets feature.
We don't. Actually, what I would like to see is this widget harvester, this element harvester that harvests elements as widgets, to be part of the widget module. Currently, it's a class in the layouts module, but it should be moved to the widgets module so that the widget module provides this feature. But currently we can't, because the layouts feature, the layouts module takes a dependency on the widgets module because it needs the layer rule engine, which is used for this little setting here. There's the visibility rule, which leverages that layer rule, so maybe we can move that out, extract that out of the widgets module, since it is kind of a generic service anyway.
Yeah. I think we could repurpose the orchard.rules module for that. That used to be for something else. It's deprecated now, but we could reuse the name maybe.
It's been deprecated for a few versions now, so maybe it makes sense to repurpose it, as you mentioned. But anyway, this is the current status, and that's the topic I would like to discuss with the group. Potentially moving the layer, the rules engine or the code to the rules module, and then we can move things around and make things more cleaner, and that would be a good basis for the next step of this widgets module, where as I just explained, this would be changed with a layout editor where you can drag and drop elements and replace this entire screen, basically. And then you wouldn't have to write widgets anymore. You would just write elements. And if you wanted a content type or content item on your canvas, you would just either create a new type or edit an existing type. For example, you could edit the page type and mark it as placeable, which would basically, it would not turn it into a widget, but it would enable page content items to be placed on a canvas, similar to the way we can now place widgets on the canvas. But the widget stereotype would become obsolete at that point. And of course, you would probably typically create your own content types with just a title, no auto route, maybe a body part, and those would be like, HTML widgets, if you will, without the widget stereotype.
As long as you can still have a theme dictate a certain part of the layout, which would still be the case with what you're suggesting, I suppose, right?
Oh yeah, because this widgets section here, it would not be an actual layout. It would look like a layout because of basically you would have some sort of descriptive CSHTML file or of some sort that renders the zones in a more visual way. But it would just be elements linked to a zone and to a layer, just like the widget part is bound to a layer in a zone. Right. It's not actually a layout being rendered, so you would have full, complete control over your theming.
Okay, so this screen might not be, at least not to begin with, it might not be a visual representation of how the zones will actually be laid out or rendered. It might just be like a top to bottom list that you have here. It's just you drag elements onto it instead of widgets. Okay.
Yeah, you got it. And maybe ultimately in a later version, maybe we want support for creating custom layouts files, but maybe not. That would not be the purpose, at least not in the initial versions, and maybe never. But you're right. It could be a vertical list of zones initially.
Cool.
Any thoughts on that? Other thoughts? Other questions?
I like the idea of the
object.
I like the idea of the drag and drop widget editor. People have been asking for that for a while, but the widgets. I mean, I don't want us to do anything that compromises the way that the current widgets work. A lot of people are using them, and they do still have a value, especially if you need to do something that appears on multiple pages. But
that stays the same because you would still have the layers, still have the zones. The only thing that changes is instead of adding a widget to a zone, you would add an element to a zone. But an element could be pointing to any piece of content. Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting.
So that system would definitely not change because that's the power of this feature, being able to link visual components to a layer in a zone.
It also might be simpler because we're kind of collapsing. We're widget layers and layouts are starting to look more and more to work the same way, which is less confusing.
Exactly. Yep.
That's a lot of work.
Sorry?
That's a lot of work.
A little bit, but it's not too bad.
That's okay as long as everybody's paying for that. That's okay.
Do you think that you could have both simultaneously, though, Sipke? Maybe even enabled in the same sites, same website, both widgets and elements into zones?
Yes, we could have that because we would just have an additional action filter. One action filter is the widgets action filter, adding the widget shapes to the zones. And then another one would be handling the elements assigned to zones and layers. So we could have both screens in the first version, or the other could be a feature that you could toggle.
But it has to be in one filter if you want them ordered. Like one element, one widget, one element, one widget. This you can only do it if it's one filter.
That's true.
So in the end, it always has to be an element, even if an element is wrapping a widget.
Unless you also introduce the option of assigning like a priority to things placed here.
Yeah, the widgets, they have a position. And then you would have to have a position for elements so that it would mix, but that would become
how do you
messy and hard to work with.
Because in the editor you want to drag and drop, so above and below, so they have to know each other and to have a common positioning.
Yeah.
And then if you have two filters, the filter can just add in a list, and the other will add after in the same list, which is the zone. That's why it has to be the same filter. It will be easier to change everything into elements.
Yeah, I was actually more after like a a backward compatibility period where we could have both around for people.
But I think it would be easy to do that if you convert everything to an element. You just take the current widget layers and you say now, during the migration, you wrap all of them into the element widget or the widget element.
So you mean people who have existing widgets, they would be automatically wrapped in an element?
Yes.
That would be easy, yeah, because we have all the information we need. The layer and the zone.
In the UI, nothing will change for them. They will see their widget, but internally it's an element. They don't know it's a widget. It's a widget because it is a content item. That's it.
Correct.
One thing that widgets do have right now that elements don't is that they are content items and they're versionable.
That's why you have an element widget, a widget element, which will just point to a content item instance. So they are versioned. They will still work the same.
Okay, yeah. But if we're aiming for, phasing widgets out completely in the long run, maybe we also ought to think about versioning elements.
No, I think if you want to version elements, you would, you create paid content items, and those content items have layouts, and those content items themselves are versionable. And if you care about versioning, that is the domain of content, and so you would just add a content item to your canvas because you care about versioning.
In the context of a page or a whole layout, yes. But what if in the context of widgets?
You can agree that if a layout is versionable, then everything is solved.
Yeah. So
yes, that's why I say in the context of a layout, but in the context of the widgets and the replacement of widgets, then that wouldn't be the case.
So a version of a layout points to specific widget IDs, which themselves have their own version. So when you could not change the layout version, it's published, but when the content item of the widget is published, then it appears in the layout.
Yes.
And at the same time, you can.
That's what we have now, because this set of zones is not versionable either. It's the individual widgets that are versionable.
But what Daniel wants is doable if layers are content items.
Layers are content items already.
They are already, but they are not versioned. Okay. So it's just.
So what you're saying is this whole screen might be a layout that in itself is versionable.
Yes.
Okay, that would make sense.
This way, when you edit an element, it's the state is part of the layout. So you could say, save layout as draft, and you don't see the difference until you publish the layer, until you publish the layer.
Oh, interesting. So are you saying that the layer, currently it is already a content item, would that have a layout part?
No, I wouldn't do it on the layer level.
There's something that maybe needs to be created because layer is not layer. But we see what I mean. It's something. Yeah. But you need the association class between the layer and something else. You need a content item that you can manage and say save.
I would make this thing that what we're looking at now. This whole screen would be a content item. This whole layout that you can version.
Yes, and the visibility is also part of the.
Yeah.
The rule is part of this content item, yes. So.
Yep. Yeah, that's cool. That makes sense. Sébastien, do you have any objections against Daniel's suggestion? Daniel's suggestion
because you Skyped me and he had the same suggestion, so you talked about it. So so maybe just the naming, because if you call it rules, if that's the question, is that a question?
That's the question.
Yeah, see if you call orchard rules, the visibility rules, maybe, can we find a name that won't collide with rules so we don't say people,
Yeah, that's tricky.
Like display rules, visibility rules, or predicates?
These rules aren't just maybe predicate or something, because they evaluate true or false, and we are using it for visibility, but it could be used for anything else. So predicates, maybe predicates. That's a cool name.
Sounds so abstract, though.
Yeah, I know, but nobody's supposed to use that unless they understand the goal of this thing, and then they will say, yeah, that makes sense.
That is true. It's just used by other modules.
Maybe we could call it conditions.
Conditions, yeah, that's fine too. Yeah, conditions, UI rules.
Okay, so we'll come with a name, but we will not repurpose the rules module then.
If you cannot do that, that's better. That's less issues. And I've already talked about it. Maybe if we want also to use JavaScript instead at some point, but it will be a breaking change somehow. So we can make more complex rules and make it easier to extend. Also, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But what execution engine should we use, Sébastien? Do you have one?
You know the answer, and we have already talked like for years about it.
Yeah, I know.
And it's very fast. Might be even faster than what you are using today. So.
Okay.
Good.
That's
Right.
it for me.
That's it only?
Yeah, just that. I know. But little steps, small steps. And I need to fix this. We don't want the widget with problems.
Yeah. So I'd like to.
So question, Sébastien, what you've seen so far, do you think it's okay if we merge that into the dev branch after I fix this issue here?
Yes.
Or okay, then I'll merge that in. And
Are you using it in prod? No, it's just if it's a feature, that's even better because I don't care.
Yeah,
it's a new feature. If the feature is broken, it's not a breaking change, or it's not breaking Orchard instances, so that's fine. But it works.
Okay.
But I mean.
Yeah, it could have problems. Actually, what I would like to do is create this new module, this conditional or conditions module, so that I can move out the dependency or the layer, the rules engine out of widgets into the conditions module, and then refactor the widgets module to take a dependency on that, and refactor the layouts module to take a dependency on that same conditions module.
Then check everything that you're breaking, all the namespaces and everything, so we can document, because some modules will be broken.
Okay.
Might be broken.
Like, I don't think so.
If someone is using the current namespaces.
Oh, that service. Yeah, of course. Okay, yeah, I'll maintain a list of changes then.
I will think about OneStop, for instance. Maybe they use that because they have layout engines, they have slides thing. I don't know if they use it.
Which one? I'm sorry.
Well, I can't speak for them, of course.
The visibility rules, like default, authenticated, things like that.
Not really.
Outside of widgets. Okay.
No, I think we've written a couple additional ones for layers, but I don't think we use them for anything else.
Yeah, so if you have your own custom layer rules, that would not break. Well, maybe the namespaces, they would change.
Yes.
So that's a compilation error, which is easily fixed by updating the namespaces.
But still breaking change, so people will have to fix their modules.
Sure.
Okay. So I like to show you the current state of Orchard 2. What is working right now? Nick will say, yes, I want it. So let me share. I was about to ask, how do I share my screen? But I won't. Okay, Benedek.
It's still loading. And I see it now, thanks.
Okay, so the solution just is on the Orchard 2 repository. Okay. It should work. I don't know what the configuration step, how hard it is to make it running. I haven't done it in a while. It works on my machine. So what is working today? Let me show you. It requires a SQL Server database because SQLite is broken right now. It will be fixed. It's fixed already, but it's on a dev branch of Entity Framework on the ASP.NET repository. So this is the database I'm using. Okay, and I have multiple tenants already in the database. So the current state is that Orchard 2 supports tenants, supports setup, goes through setup and creates the tenants. It also supports table prefix. This is why I have 10 tenants with different table prefixes, because I wanted to try that. On my
That's why I bought a case. Yep. And that's why I gotta spend more money to make sure I can keep the nice thing.
That's Ryan. I will just meet you, Ryan, in the moment. So Orchard, let me check my repository, Orchard Web, and it's working exactly the same. So in the app data, you have the sites. These are just temporary tenants I wanted to try. You have the sites, the default tenant, which has the settings file, which is exactly the same, okay, on purpose right now. You have also documents, so I will explain you how it works when you save document when I show you. So I just need to start this thing. Let me start it. To start the web app, right now you do dnx web to run the web command from the, and I will do debug just to show you how it works internally. Dnx web, and then it asks me to.
Are you in the right folder in app web, in app data?
No. But that works, that's weird. Right. Thank you.
Good.
Next. This one. Debugger attached. Then it will execute a startup CS and run the web server. It's loading on the libraries, started, and now the application is ready, so I just need to hit this endpoint. And my default tenant, I explicitly actually mapped it to tenant 1. Okay, and you see that Chrome is executing the request even if I haven't hit enter. It's crazy. So if I hit enter, it's going back to the request. And it failed. Ah! The tenant don't exist. Let me check that. Let me remove this breakpoint. Sorry. Okay, so this is the tenant test 1, and this is the home index route. And this thing is defined in the module named Orchard Demo. This is the only module that we have today. And there is a routes file exactly like in Orchard 1, and this one says map route home index to demo home index. There is also a default route like in Orchard 1. For Nick, I added it recently. So if, for instance, you go to the controller, which is exactly as Orchard 1, and you see there is a row action which is not mapped, you can do home/row, and it will won't work. What is that? Controller action.
What have you done?
You broke everything, Nick.
I didn't break anything.
Oh, I know, sorry. The default route is Orchard Demo / so the module name, area, controller, action. Okay, so that works as expected. So this is a default route. Otherwise, you can define your own route. And this is exactly like Orchard 1, right? Tell me if I'm wrong. And the tenant. And obviously, if your default tenant doesn't have a prefix, it will be this way, and it works. Okay, so this is a page. And it's quite fast because there is actually no theming, and it's doing nothing, so it's very fast. Not that fast, but it's in debug. But otherwise, it's in the 5 milliseconds if it's in release and
should be
not
faster.
attached. It's 5 milliseconds, trust me. And I can have like thousands of requests per second, and it's the MVC pipeline and the Orchard pipeline. So that's fine. If you go on the home index, this starts being interesting because this one is a form, and if I look at the source code for the index is displaying the view, which is just a form, but on the post, it will access the content manager, create a new content item of type foo. It will access its test content part 1, which is a content part. Okay, and look at that. The content part is not a content part record. There is no record. There is no retrieve or store for the content. It's just a POCO, a pure POCO. A part is a pure POCO.
So we got rid of the info set stuff.
Correct. And in the migration, which is exactly like in Orchard 1, and with a simple difference I will show you. So create return 1, and we say alter the type foo and with part test content part 1. Okay, exactly the same thing. And it will weld this content part. So you can use it here as content part dot line equals text. For the new content item, I'm assigning the part text. And what you have is you have content part and you also have content version parts. Okay, to mimic the same behavior as Orchard 1. And then when you call create, it will materialize the content item records, meaning in the database as a document, and your content item will be, let me see, will it be, it's in memory, but it will have its ID populated, the one that will be in the database. This is very important because all these parts, they need reference to the content item they own, or the version and the content item version and the content item itself need to be linked somehow. So we need a logical identifier before it's saved to the database. And this is why when you call create, you have an ID. The ID is populated. And this is also why you can use this ID to do a redirection. But the transaction will be actually committed when the request is done.
Do you think maybe we should make create asynchronous?
Maybe we'll see. We'll see on case, but yeah, we'll see. I don't think.
Maybe we can make the index action async as well.
Well, actually, it is, but
it is under the hood. I know.
Yeah, the transaction is and the commit is. You will see. Yeah, we can talk offline, but how is it?
Feels like it should be.
Actually, for create, no, because the save action does nothing but marking the content item to be saved later. So there is absolutely no I/O involved with the create. It's just marking it to be saved on the commit. I will show you. I can show you offline. So here we create the content item and we redirect to display, which is async, and get is async because this guy actually does some I/O. We have to change the name, but I'm just lazy. And we are loading the content item by its ID and rendering it using the view content item, which itself, the display, takes a content item as the model and say display the as.line. Okay, so what has been saved will be, so if I say hi meeting, go, I got the redirect and it says hi meeting because it's displaying item number 21. And what happened is, how is it stored? When we store the content item, I'm on test 1, so I have 3 tables here. Okay, the most obvious table is document. So here we have 21, which is a document. Okay, this is the document ID actually. It's not the content item ID, it's the document ID. So there might be a bug actually. So if I look into this table, this one is the index of all the items. And you see we have, so the content item version record index is a map index for all the content item version records. For each content item, we have multiple version records. Each of them point to the same content item. So here I've just have one version, which is for the content item 21. It's the latest version. It's the version number 1. It's the published version. It's the content type foo. Okay, this is my version. And the document representing this version is document number 22. So if I go to document, number 22, okay, it's a content item version record. It's just saying that item 22 is a content item version record. That's all we know. And the actual content of this thing is stored in this demo is stored in the file system, but it can be stored anywhere. The database is just for querying, indexing data. Okay, and if I go to app data sites test1 documents, I should see a 22.json, which will be obviously the content we typed. Control K, no, so it's not like Visual Studio, it's this thing, and you will see that in parts there is nothing. Oh, that's obviously there is nothing because there is nothing. Because the content is in another document, which is 21. I will explain. And you should see high meeting here. So so if you look at this thing, it's of type content item record. It has parts. One of the parts is of type test content part A, and it has a property line high meeting. Okay, this is how it's stored. So the idea is when you save a content item, it's represented by two documents. One document is called content item record, and the other one is called content item version record. Okay, when you load a content item, that's always this. So you need two documents, one for the version and one for the non-version part. And this part is a non-version part, so it goes in the non-version document. To ease with the migration, I kept calling the records record, but they should actually be called now documents. So we should have a content item document and a content item version document. But I'm keeping record right now for the ease of migration. But when we load,
do we care about that? Like,
we'll change it, but I don't.
I'm wondering whether we can do that. We can think about that in a migration module.
And it doesn't imply any technical changes because we can call it as we want. In Orchard 1, we had to call it record because they were mapped as record. But here we can do whatever we want.
Yeah, I think maybe we should rename it.
Because they are not actual records. We could have documents without having a single record. In this case, we just have records for the content item version records, not for the content item themselves, the content item records. Okay, this is why we have the 22 number, document number 21, which was not in the table, because we just index the versions themselves. This is what we can do best.
Yeah, I think it might be my fault because I brought across the records and kept the names as well. I think maybe we should rename them.
So about this storage here, when you have millions of documents, it doesn't maybe scale or whatever. The idea is that with YesSQL, let me show you some code on how it works. Sample bench is nice. Okay, so when you want to store some documents with YesSQL, you create a new store class instance, and you define where is the connection for the database, which will store the index. So here is the SQL connection, but you could use a SQLite connection or MySQL, Postgre, whatever you want, as long as it is SQL. And then you also need a document storage to store the documents. In this specific example, it's not what I'm using. So if you to store it as JSON documents in the file system, it will be the file system storage something. This is what I'm using by default right now in Orchard. But you can also store it in memory. This is why you have different storage engines here. You have in-memory, where the document is serialized as JSON and put into a dictionary in memory, so you lose it if you restart the app. Prevalence, which is in the dictionary in memory but not serialized as JSON, just a pointer to the document. And LightningDB, which is an embedded database, a key value storage library. Let's compare it to Lucene, for instance, where you have a file system based thing, but it's not one document per file, it's a component file system. Or like SQLite, same thing. And the next one I will have to do is the SQL storage. So the documents are also stored in the same SQL database, just stored as a plain JSON documents. There are questions? No questions, good. And I loaded test 2, but I also have test, well, test 1, I also have test 2, which will be index, should work, you see, or row, should work. I have test 3, and I have up until test 7, I think, and are all independent tenants. And to create a tenant right now, because there is no tenant module, I just create a folder by copy pasting it. I edit the settings. I remove. Oh, let me show it to you. So if I just copy test 7 from here, I put it in sites. I remove all the documents. I edit the settings. I remove the connection string. I remove that. I'm creating an empty tenant, okay, like you will do from the UI today. So uninitialized, uninitialized, table prefix test 7. So this is how I don't even need that actually. So this I need, this I need, I save, and I will restart the web server so it loads the.
Oh.
Don't worry. There are some exceptions that happened. Just waiting for the debugger. So it's loaded now. So if I go to tenant 7, it was loaded. There are some concurrency issues. So the tenant is new. So instead of creating a list of services from the tenant definitions, list of features, it says, okay, let's create a list of services just for setup because it's uninitialized. And it goes to the setup module by default. And then what is the name of your site? Test 7. SQL connection string the same one, but table prefix I will use test 7. And maybe I will before delete the test 7. Finish setup, and it's very fast. I'm like, I thought it was a bug at first. On release, it takes like 100 milliseconds to set up everything, and there are my new tables, and the tenant is set up and is reloaded. It's crazy, and it works the same way. Like from test 7, go, boom. In terms of memory,
Beautiful.
also, what?
Beautiful. Ship it.
In terms of memory, what is interesting is that between 1 and 10 tenants, I can't detect any more memory taken right now. So it's very early, but that's also encouraging because with Orchard 1, even without any module, a new tenant will take less than 10 megabytes, which is significant if you have hundreds of tenants. You could just reach like 200 or 250 tenants on the 32-bit. So here it's very encouraging. I think the main difference being that there is no NI-Bennett mapping, which was taking a huge amount of memory for each new tenant. Here there is no mapping at all, so it's very lightweight to create a new tenant. In terms of perf also, if I hit, so remember that when I load a document like this, slash, was the UI. Let's create a new one. So when you do something like this, even displaying, there is no cache right now. It will load the. Oh, there is nothing. It will load the two documents. Okay, do a query for the index and then load the two documents for the content item and the version. And even with that and with no cache, it was like between 250 and 300 requests per second on my box locally, but I'm using SQL Express, which I think is the bottleneck right now, because it's limited to one process at the same time or something like this. But it's also very, well, kind of fast, even if it's the beginning. Positive point here is that we have multi-tenancy. It's loading module dynamically with all the services. We also have all the event bus in place, like we had before. It works. What is missing is there is no theming and no shapes right now, but Nick is working on the shapes. And otherwise, it works. It's a pretty good modular framework. So we could create, you can create modules. You have migrations. You can create your indexes like this. So the main index that I am using is based on the framework. So it's an index for the framework, for the content items. But you can also create your own indexes to query your data based on your classes. They are just POCOs. We'll come with more demos, more modules, but so far it works. That's crazy. It's been just a few weeks and we already have something working. Questions?
I think Christian asked about querying. How would you query?
So let me show you in YesSQL then, because that's how you will do that, exactly the same way. So in YesSQL to query, let me open this program. So this program will show you that there is a class named user. So let's say you want to store and query user. You create a class user. Very simple, okay? And you can optionally define an integer ID if you want to manipulate the ID in the database. Then here I want to query by name. But first, to save the documents, you just do that. So you create your store and whatever engine you want to store things in, the SQL connection, and you get a store object, and from the store object you can call create schema to create a document table, and then you can also create some custom migration to create your indexes tables. I will show you after, and then to store create session. Okay, right. So this one will create some users. So to create some users from the store, you call create session, you have a session like in an Hibernate, and then you call save on the user you want to save. Very easy. You just save your POCO and it will be in database when you call commit async or when you dispose your session. Okay, that's very simple and standard way to save data. Now to query it, it's stored like a JSON, and there is no way to query it but by ID. If you want to get a document, it's by ID, unless you have an index. To create an index, you have to know what you want to query the items by. So in this case, I want to query my users by their name, whether they are adult, and their age. I don't have this information, it's pure fake. But let's say you want to query them by name. You create a class which will represent your index. In this case, I call it user by name. And I inherit from mapIndex. MapIndex means this thing will be the result of a single document. In this case, the user. So for each user, for each user, actually I have more data. So what did I mess up with here? Maybe not the same project. Yeah. Oh, that's not the same project. Sorry. For each user, it will create a user by name. And then when you have so this class will be mapped as a table in database with one column name. So the indexes are the ones which are in the database. The documents are in your document storage. So if you don't want to query a document, you don't query an index. If you just want to query by something, you create an index with just this something. And then we need to compute the user by names automatically. We need to explain how to convert a user to user by name. So you create an index provider. Here it's called user index provider for users. You implement describe, saying you get a context for user, and you say you map. So this map function will be called for each user, which will be stored. And you say for the user, create a new user by name with the name equals the username. So I just project in all your users into an index, and you could do some computation here just to filter the name, to tokenize the name, to just get the first name, to lowercase the name, to normalize, for instance, things like that. And when you do that, automatically YesSQL will store this thing into a table called user by name with one name column. So your database will only contain the things you want to query on. So in the code then, you just save, let me show you another example. You just save your user and it will automatically create the username, the user by name. So this is an example. Look at this example. This is another console app. The migration in this case is create a map index table for this index, which will have these columns. Okay, this is for a specific index. And you register an index that will build all these user by name indexes, objects. And then you still create a session with the store. And to query, you do session.query a thing, you say, give me a user. And it will give you a user. But you can also say, give me a user by its user by name. And in this case, you can do a link query on the user by name because this is what you will query. You can say adult, age. You can also say, look at that, name, start with something. So this is pure link. But there is no relationship because you can only query what is in this index. And the result of that is a list of documents which are deserialized to this class that you are asking for, user. So there is one query, there is no joins at all. It gives you first a list of IDs for the document IDs, and then the storage is queried to say, give me the ID number 1 and 2 because these are the users he queried. The nice thing with that is the storage, storing the documents, can be implemented in memory if you want. You can also have caching. You can have distributed storage. You could have different disks storing the documents, and only the index is queried. Does that answer the question? So you can only query something that you have defined.
Yeah, that's cool. I like it.
It's time. I won't take more time. People have things to do. Yeah, we'll continue to do some progress, probably on the shapes and the theming, but the modularity is already there, and dynamic loading and tenant, and that's crazy. So we'll see how fast it goes, and then we'll probably try to migrate one of the modules we have right now, just to show how hard or simple it is to migrate to Orchard 2. The modules, at least, not the data, but the modules. Good.
We should then really decide when we want to freeze at least features on the current Orchard.
I'm not sure we want...
Put every effort here.
Yeah, that's a hard question.
Yeah, it is. But it's really not a good thing to have two diverging orchards. And they did this, I think, with with Drupal. They had two versions and it just went on and on forever.
Yeah, I'm afraid of that, but yeah, at the same time, I don't think we can. Well, new features, I will agree. Like for the core team, yes, we can say at some point the new feature will just be in Orchard 2, but still we need to maintain Orchard 1 for a long time still.
Yes, with bug fixes and security fixes for sure. Just at one point say that, all right, into the Orchard.framework we won't put any more features, and then into Orchard.blocks and Orchard.alias and whatever.
Yeah, but we can't start doing that before it's released officially. We have an Orchard 2.0. Okay. Okay. Good. It's also a good time to think about things like layouts. How should layouts work, and widgets, and do we actually need that? So everything we say today are valid for Orchard 2. We should just, if we do that, we should just start it also. Well, what we start on Orchard 2 should match what we envision Orchard 1 to be in the next month. Good. Okay. Other questions?
No, everything looks good.
Great. So feel free to join the Gitter chat room to get updates, to ask questions if you want to see what's happening, or if you want to have your hands dirty with the code. Yeah, it will be interesting. But technically, it's almost everything as in Orchard 1. Very small refactoring so far. Every concept in Orchard 1 has a concept in Orchard 2. So it's almost the same thing, which is good for when you want to migrate your mind into an Orchard 2 and reuse what we've done. That should be easy.
And will it be possible, or are you also working on moving bug fixes that are ready to the current Orchard framework, for example, over?
Sometimes we do. They don't all. a lot of the bug fixes that go on in Orchard as it currently stands they don't need to be ported over, or they don't need to be ported over just yet. As Sébastien said, there's a small amount of refactorings, but the refactorings are normally in the area where we don't need to port stuff over. So we're kind of lucky in that regard.
There are no shapes right now, no theming, so all the bugs related to that, well, there's nothing to fix, there is nothing there.
I think this is a great time to be able to say, okay, now how do we want to approach, Orchard 2 as far as, rendering the layouts?
Yeah,
as opposed,
I agree. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if there are some things we want to change, even in the content storage, I'm still wondering if we should have 2 documents or a single, and pros and cons, names of perf, but also management, and theming. What should we change the theming? Should we change anything in the theming? Just say no. We should take whatever we have today and do the same thing. So I'm not sure yet. If you have ideas, go on Gitter and chat. Express yourself, please. For instance, Sipke is mentioning the media library should be the editor maybe should be changed. Yes, probably, but there are more low-level questions like shapes or theming engine, things like that. It's not just about modules. Yeah.
How do you want to approach shapes? Do you want to go and get Taylor on board with that?
I think shapes are very important so it's all about a domino effect. So I think so. Let's say Orchard is very good to create modular applications because you can enable a module, because teams can develop independently. And what you need with a modular application like this is when you create a module, you just say, oh, I render something, and it will go all by itself in the view. And all the theme is applied, and all the navigation stays the same. I don't have to handle that. So then you say, then you need a theme engine or some way to have a layout which is reusable across all the modules, and your modules don't have to look at layouts. So we could just say, can we use the current layout of MVC, or do we need our own layout that you can interchange dynamically? I think being able to change dynamically is good. So this is a theme engine. Then to make it interesting, you need the shapes, because you can detect views based on the context, and I think it's very great to create websites and to have multi-tenancy, and so we need that, and so on and so forth. And then in the end, we have all the same concepts as we had in Orchard 1. So I'm like, why should we change anything then?
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe some small, changing some small things or adapting stuff based on our experience that we say, oh, we don't need that, so don't implement that, or this thing is more important than what you thought, so it should be core, whatever. I don't know. So that's a good moment to have lots of brainstorming and give some feedback about what you like and what you don't like, and decide what we do or not, and also in which steps. Do we need it first, or can it wait? Should we have an Orchard without? So, for instance, Bertrand is, I know, completely opposed to that. Should we have Orchard without any theming engine, any rendering, just APIs, or you render your view if you want and you use the MVC layout? There is no theming.
Well, that's an interesting one, because at the moment, the way that it's built, that is exactly how it's built, right?
Yes.
You just create your own. You create your own Orchard hosting project, and you want just APIs, and that's all you have to have.
Even views, you could use. Yeah, but
yeah.
But people will say, well, Orchard is useless. Ask the companies there presented. You see, so that's.
It's kind of an opt-in model now, rather than you get everything. If you want something, then you can just opt into it. I think.
Yeah, but
when did I say that I was against that?
Oh yeah, he's here. Crazy. No. No, we talked about it, I know, a few years back. Could we have an Orchard without a theming engine? And you say, no, we need the theming engine.
Okay, maybe I changed my mind.
Okay. Or maybe that was me.
No, in the context of Orchard 2, it makes total sense. For the reasons you just explained. I'm totally on board with that.
With what? With no theming engine?
Well, Okay, so with it being possible to have an orchard without
yes, that could, if we can make it like a feature, like a dependency, like Nick was saying. Oh, my module needs the admin, which needs the theming or whatever.
Yeah, it could probably be something that you inject into the system pretty early on, but you don't have to.
Like you said in the past week, I think you mentioned also being able to have distribution. So we could have distribution with a theme engine and everything to create website, or one which is just to create modular applications.
Yeah. And related to that, actually, even themes don't have to be that differentiated from modules. And maybe the theme engine is just it's almost a module loader of sorts.
Well, this is what we have today, just a naming convention, just to organize them.
It is, but it's not something we expose.
The differences are in the management, because we want to display themes differently in the UI than modules, so we need something that is differentiating them.
You need some metadata that tells you it's a theme, but it doesn't mean that there is a functional difference between the two.
Oh, today the metadata is the manifest.
We are making other differences in the way we build them. There are differences.
Okay. Well, yes. So it's So should we make a meeting throwing all the IDs, or just continue by mail and Gitter to see what people think that we should remove, add? Based on the experience we have after 5 years of Orchard 1, what we should change in Orchard 2. We have never really asked the question. We just, okay, let's go.
Yeah, let's do a meeting. I'm
like,
up for that.
You know, we can talk about theming engine. We could have a meeting about what do we want to change in the theme engine, what do we want to change in the shapes, what do we want to change in placement, in event handlers, in dependencies, in modularity, whatever. In performance, what do we need, numbers that we need to reach for performance. And
sure.
Yeah.
So, design meetings, whatever. And that would be good if people like Lombik, IDRable, One Stop with lots of experience, plus the others, Piotr, taking part and giving their feedback, or at least write, if you guys could write even offline the list of things that you would like to see in Orchard 2, that you will change, remove, add. That will already be awesome to have an idea of kind of an agreement.
Should I start a thread on Orchard 2? What would you like to see?
I'd like to get the full opinion independently of a discussion, you know, just to have a big brainstorm and then start discussion across different topics.
Yeah, sounds reasonable.
Because if you create one thread, it will go everywhere.
Yeah.
There is nothing to follow. So let's get a brainstorming from everyone, mangle it, talk about this exchange, and then create different threads. And ask the questions that we don't agree or we need clarification. If we all agree that we need to remove shapes, then okay, decision taken, we remove shapes. I'm taking the most stupid example just to show you. But yeah. Good?
Yeah.
Great, thank you guys. Talk to you on Thursday, and please send an email, share it on the discussion if you want to share it publicly, just to have a brainstorming of the ideas you want to do for Orchard 2. Zoltan, that's your task for tonight. You don't sleep until you have done that.
I already have a keyword in mind.
Good, thank you. Okay, thanks guys. See you.
See you later, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
There we go.
Goodbye.